I'm convinced Pokemon is just determined to piss me off. Even when they do things that make me happy, they have to find a way to do it in a way that's irritating. This relationship, it's not working. I'm referring obviously to the Pokemon Direct that took place earlier today. This thing, boys, we gotta talk about it. Let's start off with the easy part. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. That's a mouthful. Myself, I'm not really familiar with the Mystery Dungeon games, but I know many were hoping for a new entry in the series, and you got this remake. Maybe it's something they're using to gauge interest in this type of game. I thought it looked alright, visually not very impressive, but I am eager to check it out, and here is what's great about it. A demo of the game was released today as well. I haven't played it yet, but I definitely will, and I assume many others who haven't played these games before will as well. You can never go wrong with demos in my opinion, especially with something that's a spin-off like this. I think it's a great way to hook people in who may have otherwise just passed on it completely. People can also import their save data. Great, love how they handled that. Now let's get into the more controversial announcement, the Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC. I'll start again here with what I like. Right off the bat, just the idea of DLC adding content to the current games. I much prefer that to having like an ultra version where you essentially buy the game over again for the new stuff. And $30 I think was a good price for what you're getting. It's an expansion pass with 2 parts, the Isle of Armor that's set to come out in June, and then the Crown Tundra, which is set for fall of this year. They seem like sort of mini regions. They'll have obviously new areas to explore, new rivals, new Pokemon, expanded wild area type zones, which was one of my complaints from the original release, that they should have expanded on the wild area idea. The environments themselves seem cool. You're getting more customization options, legendary Pokemon, all that good stuff. Now, I would still say that the original Sword and Shield were weak in terms of their value. That's something I think people have a hard time kind of understanding when I give a compliment. Like, just because I think the value is good here doesn't forgive the original release, in my opinion. It's not like I'm going back on what I said or anything, but I do think in a lot of ways this is a step in the right direction. And this is also just my takeaway from what I saw in this Direct. Obviously, I can't make a decision on the quality of these expansion packs until I actually play them. Also, I like that each version will be getting some unique content here. Different Pokemon, different rivals, etc. will appear in each version. I always say I like giving the different games a more unique feel, but this is also where I start to run into some problems. I think this was a good time to give people who buy both titles some added value, but of course, they chose to nickel and dime everyone. Each game has its own unique expansion pass, so you have to buy either the Pokemon Sword expansion pass for $30 or the Pokemon Shield expansion pass for $30. Of course, you could buy both, but that will total $60. Meaning, if you want access to all the content from all the games, you're looking at $180 plus tax. That is some serious cash. They should have thrown a bone to people and say, you buy the expansion pass once and you get it for both games, as I do not think there's going to be enough exclusive content for people to justify buying this pass twice. This would have, for one, given people more value again for buying both games at the outset, but also it would make it more enticing for people to buy the other version, like myself. I bought only Pokemon Shield, and I am going to buy this expansion. If buying the expansion once also gave me access to the expansion on Sword, I may be interested in buying a copy of Sword to get access to all of that exclusive content. Nevertheless, they're probably assuming there are enough whales that'll buy anything and everything, so why not just keep charging? Of course, you don't need all the content. I see that as an excuse for this. Like, oh, well, you don't need to play everything, but yeah, you can say that about literally any game with shitty DLC practices. Oh, you don't need to play it all. And especially with something like Pokemon where they sell the dual packs with both versions of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Don't even try to tell me there aren't a lot of people who want access to all the content. Which brings me to another issue I have with all this. With this DLC, we're getting over 200 returning Pokemon from past games. I probably don't need to tell you that leading up to this game's release, the biggest issue in terms of cut content was the National Dex cuts, where we were told because of all the improvements, the models, animations, the overall quality of the game, because of all that, they couldn't get all the Pokemon in and had to make cuts. Bullshit. I was saying when the talk first started that it didn't seem necessary. I didn't see all the drastic changes and improvements. Then when the game came out, I felt further justified, as the Pokemon animations in that certainly didn't blow me away. And again, the game experience overall seemed pretty lackluster. Now you're telling me you just had to wait for this paid DLC to come out? Yeah, okay. And remember all the defenders when the cuts were first announced saying crap like, this was something they were going to have to do at some point. The cuts were necessary. There are too many Pokemon. And then the games came out and they're like, oh, I'm glad they made the cuts. It makes having a complete dex easier. It's better for competitive play. Where are all of them now after this announcement? Oh, of course. The people who cheered the cuts are now cheering for the Pokemon being added back in, because they will cheer for literally anything the Pokemon Company or Game Freak does. It's that simple. I mean, here we are. What has it been? Less than 2 months since these games released and they announced that all these Pokemon are being added? Again, alongside this DLC, of course. And let's get the BS arguments out of the way right off the bat here. Things like, oh, you can trade for them even if you don't have the DLC. Well, someone in that instance still has to buy the DLC, don't they? And you will be able to bring your past Pokemon over if they're part of this DLC, but of course to do that, you'll need to pay for Pokemon Home. Myself, I think that's more so what the holdup was for all this stuff. It's not about the actual task of bringing the Pokemon over, it's about monetizing it, making sure you can milk people as much as possible to get access to all their Pokemon. And if it's not, because I do see people like, oh no, it was just like a time thing. They needed more time to get all these Pokemon. Okay, why aren't they just putting all the old Pokemon into the base game when these DLCs release? You still get all that content, right? All that new stuff in the new DLC to sell it. Not asking them to give everything away. Or with Pokemon Home, say you're going to give it to people for free for the first couple months to get all their Pokemon over. If it isn't about milking people, if it's not about money, then why don't they do these things? Just like restricting the online features to Nintendo Online is about selling Nintendo Online subscriptions. Oh, but you could sit there and try to trade for all 200 Pokemon. All in all, my takeaway is this. I like what they're doing with the DLC route better than the way they've handled expanding on core games in the past, but I do not at all like the way they're handling the reintroduction of the past Pokemon, as well as the price tag if you want all the content. If this was an EA game and I was out here bitching about how it costs $180 for all the content and you need to pay for all these services and online access to get all the features, many, I dare say nearly all of the people who are trying to come up with some excuse for it would be agreeing with me. They'd be cheering, good, yeah, ChiGuy, take down EA, they suck. But for some reason, because it's Pokemon, because it's the Pokemon Company, Game Freak, Nintendo, we're supposed to give them a pass. Sorry, it's not happening. And I think if there's one thing that all the defenders should be forced to agree with at this point, is all the reasons we heard for these cuts, whether it be quality of life, balance, whatever, it was all garbage. Okay, for these Pokemon to be announced a mere couple months after the game's released, this was the plan from the start. Full stop, you'll never convince me of anything else. You can't have all these reasons on why you can't have so many Pokemon in it just to bring them back a few months later. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on the latest Pokemon Direct in the comments. Are you excited about the Mystery Dungeon release? And how do you feel about the Pokemon Sword and Shield expansion passes and the way they are tied to bringing in old Pokemon? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of the latest Pokemon Direct. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you want to keep the conversation going, hit me up on Twitter at JohnnyZakari. And join my Discord, ChiGuy and Friends. Link to both in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching.